I talk a lot about hand raisers. They build networks faster. They get up, put up for more opportunities because they're naturally curious. They're hungry. Who wants to convince someone to engage with them or work on something? You want the hand raiser who's like, I'm dying to get involved with that. Let me just do something on that project. That has really opened many of my doors in my career.
Lauren Beckstedt, welcome to Building Better CMOs.
Thank you.
So listen, now you and I have known each other for a little while because you've been on the board. I don't know, is it 4 years on the board of the MMA?
Yes. Yeah. 4 years. I think that's right.
Yeah, that's great. I still remember the day, I think it was Deb Wall who got us connected. And I don't even remember how she said. She goes, I think it was some variation of like, I know this really smart woman who's really interested in playing more of an industry role. Talk to her. I think that's kind of the direction I got. She was very
That's
big
a
accolades.
pretty good endorsement.
Totally. Now listen, you're at Brunswick, which is a marine recreation company. Maybe kind of introduce the company because I'm not sure everybody would know the modern Brunswick, right?
Right. Yeah. So we are the largest recreational marine company. So think of it as kind of luxury consumer durables, boats, engines, electronics, and services like Freedom Boat Club, which is a membership model. We are a global organization, and on the boat side, we make boats from, 2,000 up to 2 million boats. We've got 6 of the top 10 brands in the industry, like Mercury Marine, Boston Whaler, Sea Ray, Lund. I mentioned Freedom Boat Club, Simrad, Lowrance. Those are just some of our examples.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, if you have any orientation marine, like, the brands, the big brands, the important brands are with Brunswick, no question about it. And that's a big change because the company used to be much more diversified, right? And then it concentrated in marine some number of years ago. Is that what happened?
Yes. We were effectively a holding company where we had other verticals like bowling, fitness.
Right.
We sold the fitness business I'm trying to think, in around 18. Um, and we really started to focus our portfolio on recreational marine, and we made the transition to an operating company.
Right. So I guess the question for some of the listeners, how many boat shows do you actually attend a year?
Oh gosh, like 2,000. Me personally or our
Yeah,
brand?
you personally.
I would say, I don't know, probably 50. But our brands are at 2,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you spend most of your time on sort of wobbly docks, I guess, or something? It feels like that.
Oh, docks, I don't even notice, but I am traveling every week. I actually love it though. I feel like it's such a privilege. I mean, my job is to go get out on the water and get out on boats. How much better does it get?
Totally. And listen, boaters, I mean, I don't know if I know a ton of boaters, but like, they're fanatics, right?
Yes, it's a lifestyle.
Yes,
Yeah,
lifestyle was the way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a variation of the bumper sticker you probably see most of, I'd rather be fishing, I'd rather be boating. It's like all in that same sort of context, right?
Totally. And before that, I was in fitness, and the two had similarities in that they were kind of passionate lifestyles. It's business, it's not altruism, but it can feel altruistic sometimes when you get out on the water and your head is clear, and it's just such a great feeling. Yeah.
I totally agree. I've been lucky to have owned homes that sit on water. It's always my best. It's always the best option. If you can look at water, I think somehow the world is just made better.
Yeah. You realize how much bigger the world really is than you. And sometimes that's kind of exciting, isn't it?
Absolutely. Tell you. Okay. Now you were brought in though, not originally as CMO. I think you were brought in the marketing department, but then you've had to, as you've risen to CMO, you've had to do a transformation of how Brunswick looks at marketing. Is that the right way to put that?
Yeah, so I've always started my career in marketing generally, and then at Brunswick, I actually started on the CMO side through talent management and talent strategy. I was working in our corporate office on talent strategy specific to guiding our operating model changes.
Oh, interesting.
And as I was doing that work, partnering with our now CEO, David Folks, we saw some need for focused attention on the marketing function.
Yeah. Okay.
It was very fragmented, and it was kind of a marketer in each brand working with many different agencies. So we had to establish what were the core competencies and how do we really leverage our scale across the portfolio to bring brands to market in a way that was efficient and stronger than it had been previously.
Right. I don't know if I realized that you had come from sort of more general. I mean, listen, I know you got an MBA from Northwestern, so you're smart, good student. You know what you're doing. You figured out the world, general management, and finance. But and then to lead at South America, were you? Let me ask you a funny question. Were you excited to go to the marketing function, or you said, "Well, let me just do this for a little bit, and I'll get it spruced up, and then turn it over to somebody else." I don't know.
Well, actually, HR and talent was the bigger reach for me because I started my career in marketing and marketing agencies. It was doing the stint in talent where I really kind of felt like an imposter. But
Okay.
I had always done a lot of work in strategy. And if you think about it, and it was our CHRO at the time who noticed the similarities. Engaging with your talent and bringing a talent strategy to life is not a whole lot different than engaging with consumers and bringing a marketing strategy to life.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And in
interesting.
fact, the skills were very transferable. But for me too, it was like a master class in leadership behaviors and how to build high performance teams and effective organizations. So I got as much out of that role as I gave.
Got it. Hey, also too, I'm kind of curious. You went through a process to come up with a new tagline I saw. So next never rests. So you want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that? I don't know if I would have. I don't know if I would have known that that was obvious for Brunswick when I first saw it. So give us some background to that.
I think that's the point. Interestingly, we talk a lot about kind of the science and the art of marketing, and that was a moment where it didn't honestly, the data wouldn't have mattered. It just so well embodied our company culture, but we went through a process of rebranding over the last year and a half. Um, Brunswick has been around for more than 175 years, and interestingly, there are only 5 companies that in the US that have been or I'm sorry, there's less than 50 companies in the US that have been around that long.
Oh, I wouldn't even think. I wouldn't even think sort of that close. I mean, there's a couple. GM, I think, is up there in 100 and some
Yeah,
odd number of
GE, yeah.
years. So there's a few. There's a real stalwarts. But wow, that's
Very
interesting.
few.
Okay.
Actually, Brunswick as a brand was kind of an empty vessel, and we had done so much transformation to focus on marine technology, our innovation profile, that it was a little bit, we were kinda mismatched. So we spent some time on a rebrand, which I've talked to you about before, but Never Rests was one of the concepts that came through, and it was like the second we heard it, there was just
Every,
nothing that better embodied our culture. I would say
and what does the tagline mean? Like, what was the insight? What sort of got you to that? That's what kind of caught my attention. Like, how did you actually figure that out? Besides the obvious, it made sense when you heard it, but you had to get there first.
yeah. Well, I think it's just kind of a creative iteration process, but as the leader in the industry, we really hold ourselves to a high standard of pushing boundaries and setting kind of the pace of change, not just on the innovation profile, but also the consumers we're reaching. Uh, we really hold ourselves accountable for democratization of voting and making it accessible to all.
Hmm.
So if you think about the role that you may play, if you're in that leadership position, you're not looking at somebody else to give you, there's no pace car, you're the pace car. So you really have to get off the X and push yourself. And honestly, that's how we kind of chase down all of our day to day. So, but I think that was the thought leadership behind it.
What percentage of American households have a boat? Do you know offhand?
Oh, good question. I don't know offhand, but it's a small percentage. So the
I mean, there's tons of room for growth. As I think as lifestyles change, I'm
well,
surprised even, and I don't know. I'm assuming COVID was good. The pandemic was maybe good for a business like this, right? As people reevaluated their lives, I assume.
yeah, COVID was great. I mean, the other thing is, there's lots of ways to participate in boating besides owning a boat. So 140 million Americans go boating each year, and mid to high 50 million go fishing each year. And there's some kind of overlap of that, and they don't all own a boat.
Yep.
In fact, of the 140, many of those are children.
Hmm.
But we also have Freedom Boat Club, so you can be part of a club model. We own Flight, which is an e-foil kind of surfboard product, which is really awesome if you haven't ever seen one of those or tried those. So when I talk about making it accessible, I mean recreational marine more generally, not just owning a boat. But yeah, in terms of true ownership, it's a much smaller population.
Yeah, listen, some of my own favorite memories as a child were going fishing with my dad.
That is a very common story, and I honestly, I hope it continues to be, common. My boys just were fishing with their dad this weekend. I got the weekend off. We have a nice.
Everybody wins.
Yeah, everybody wins. We've got a lunch, but that is actually the most common, introduction to marine, is it being introduced by a close friend or relationship. Often kind of dad, brother, grandfather, kind of long-term lifestyle. And what I really think about is how do we maintain that relevance? Are children still growing up with those experiences? And if not, how do we kind of encourage them and make sure they're happening?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, great, 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 great. Yeah, no, I get it. The whole boating, and actually, you actually sort of built a whole boating community too within Brunswick they didn't have before. Is that right?
Oh, Ripple, yes. So, and that's not necessarily just Brunswick. Ripple is our consumer advisory board, which is 15,000 boating enthusiasts across many different brands. And we use those folks to help guide us on what their needs are, what are their interests. They even get sneak peeks on things like innovation, color palettes, trends. They're just kind of our always on consumer arm that gives us real-time feedback.
I love it. I love it, Lauren. Yeah, it really, I mean, listen, I've talked to you a bunch about the business over the years, and I'm sort of enamored with the boat, but not a boat owner yet. I haven't made that
Yet is
commitment,
the
but
key word there.
yeah, exactly. No, I can see. I spend a lot of time for not being a boat owner. I spend a lot of time looking at boat videos on YouTube, going to boat shows. But so one of these days, because I do get the orientation to I don't know, water just being a better place to be sometimes.
But isn't that so interesting that you've gone to boat shows? And I don't know how actively you were in thinking about buying, but have you ever just wandered around on a weekend at, the houseware show? Or, I mean, boat shows and the industry in general is just one of those places that crosses over between professional and just your personal interests so easily.
Correct, correct. And listen, well, I don't know. I don't know if well, one of these days, I think that's like you said, yet. Hey, listen, speaking of the Ripple community is giving you advice, what's the best, Building Better CMOs always likes to ask, like, what's the best advice you've been given? Like, I don't know, it could be personal, it could be professional, you can go in any direction you want, but I often find when I talk to, other board members like you, Lauren, that, I don't know, there's a couple of pivotal moments in their lives where somebody's had something that made a big difference to them.
Yeah, for me, there were two. Um, there was a woman on our board a number of years ago who
On the Brunswick board, you mean, right?
on
Yeah,
the
just to be
on our
clear.
Brunswick board, yeah, who
Yep.
said to me, and actually she said this to kind of a leadership group of our top female executives. She said, there was someone asked a question about, you've done a lot of moves, you've run a lot of businesses. How did you get yourself going?
Mm.
And she said, there's very few things in life that you can't get yourself out of. And sometimes you hear things and they just land so squarely. And for me, it was just such incredible permission to take risks and just go for it. It's like, how badly can I really make a decision and not be able to unwind it? I mean, really, when you pressure test it, it just is kind of like, just go for it, just jump in. And honestly, somewhat related, I adopted that really thoroughly in my career. And I would say, though my career path kind of does look like a straight line, I really just chase my interests and whatever is the next opportunity. It's not like I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a CMO." And I remember telling my dad that one time, "I'm not even sure what path I'm really on. I'm just going with it. I'm following the momentum." And I was he was we were talking through kind of how to be more purposeful, and I was saying, my network is not that purposeful. It's just kind of created organically. And he said, he said, one, keep going. But two, he said, it's so interesting because you're sitting here thinking, like, where are you going with this? And he said, my growing up as a boy, obviously, or men, he said, I was always kind of nurtured to just go for the next thing. And I was trained at a very early age to be told no and keep going for it. Like
Mm-hmm.
men are just, and this is my father's advice to me. He said,
Yeah.
men are just primed to keep asking the girl out till they say yes. Prom, whatever it is, keep going
Yeah.
after that sale,
Yeah.
go for the
Yeah.
next job. It's almost like inherent in the way he was at the time brought up don't worry about the no, just keep going for it. Where he was saying differently, women at the time are really more primed to be the prettiest, be the smartest, be really proper, stay in your box.
100%, Lauren.
And he was like, don't stay in the box.
Yeah.
When you engage with people in your professional network, ask them for help. Ask them. And the other thing he said to me is when men will say, hey, let's go get a drink, let's go play golf or whatever. He's like, men always do it, they follow through. Women half the time are like, I don't think he really meant let's go get a drink, or we're not going to really go get golf. They don't follow through. So when he told me that, I was like, well, listen, I can follow through. And actually, very soon after, I reconnected with my guidance counselor at Kellogg through the MBA program. And I said, hey, I haven't been that purposeful about my network. I need to rebuild this. Can you introduce me to one person that would be relevant? And she said, oh, yeah, I went to school with the CMO at GM, Deb Wall.
Deb Wall.
And let me introduce you to her. And I was like, well, wait, this is my first step. Do I really want to start at the top here?
and Deb's she's a looming presence, I think, in the world.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
So I talked, and it was very relevant. Part of what GM was working through was some channel transformation. They were doing a lot with the Cadillac brand. There was a lot of similarities to what we were doing. So I did my homework. I didn't just call her and say, hey, can you help me? I did my homework. And one of the things I saw was she was engaged with the MMA.
She was my board chair at the time. Yep.
Yeah. So when I closed my call with her, I said, hey, I saw you're engaged with MMA. I'd love to learn more. If you could just introduce me to anyone who could help me get engaged. And she said, oh, I'm going to introduce you to Greg. I'll connect him because I know they're looking for more members. And I know now you're probably beating people away with a stick. Your MMA has become such an explosion. But at the time, I think you called me the next day.
Oh, is that right? That's funny. Yeah.
It was within a couple days. And I felt like, wow, what immediate kind of feedback loop in terms of something so effective in terms of building your network.
Yeah, listen, I'm a big believer. I think, and I remember what Deb said to me because I'm a big believer, and I'll even give you sort of other perspective, given I'm a little bit older on things at this stage. But anybody who sees either opportunity or responsibility, however you want to look at that, to get involved at the industry level, I'm obviously a strong encourager of that, having now run 2 nonprofit trade associations. Mm-hmm. But I also too think, Lauren, it's funny, and I'll say this too with a it's a little bit of a gender tinge to it. So apologies to any of the listeners if they don't like that. But I've watched a lot of men grow up, in particular in their career, and if they don't have a strong network, and it would go for anybody, but I've seen it there a lot. If you don't have a network, there's a point in time, I would say somewhere around 50 and beyond, you don't get hired unless they know you or can triangulate to you, like in a personal way. And so my point is that network, and having that network, valuable at any stage of your career, essential when you get into the latter part of your career. And I'm surprised that people don't do that. Yeah.
I'm sure. I agree. I obviously don't know what it's like to be a man without a network, but generally, I think, especially in our field, it will become incredibly lonely, and you just need people who speak your language. You need your peer set. But then in terms of opportunities, marketers know how to market themselves. And for other organizations, it can be hard to cut through the noise. One of the ways you can cut through the noise is by tapping your network. And if you aren't part of a network, you're in trouble.
Yep, I love that. Hey, I want to go back though to your point around sort of this element of risk. I think it's. I just saw Rashmi, I don't know how to pronounce her last name off the top of my head, but Rashmi, who founded and ran Girls Who Code. I've actually gotten to know her, and she did a TED talk. She goes, "Why do we teach boys to be brave and girls to be perfect?"
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, that's what you just said too.
I think
that really struck me when I heard that.
Yes, it struck me too.
Yeah. And especially as a father of daughters, I in particular thought, wow, that's so interesting that we introduced that kind of bias into the world, probably without even realizing it at some level. But I think it's true.
Well, and demystifying that is one of my personal passions. I don't think many people that work very closely with me would accuse me of being perfect. I kind of shatter that. I like
You
to
make a
shatter that
point.
early
You
on.
make a point. They don't see that.
Yeah, and you can see I've got young sons, but I worry more for people coming up looking at leaders if there is a perception that they're perfect and to get there you have to be perfect. They just won't go for it. So I think it's just as important in terms of our responsibilities as leaders to be really clear, put your game face on for sure,
Yeah.
and show up with intention. But behind the scenes, yeah, it's not perfect. It can be a mess sometimes. We're making trade offs all over the place.
Yeah. And
Um,
and I think your career point is good too. It's like, I'm a very big believer in like have a goal, have something you're aiming for. Like I often will ask people that I can almost be clear you could have never charted the path to have gotten there and you might end up on a totally different goal. Like I didn't plan to run trade associations. Now I've turned around two of the darn things. And it really has become the thing that really excites me. Like
yeah,
I don't know if would I still be working if I wasn't doing this work. I'm not 100% sure because it's so mission based. And I love working with people like you and Deb and the rest of the board.
hmm
It's very funny.
it must be tapping into some of your personal I've spent a lot of time thinking about my personal motivations too to make sure they line up. Otherwise, you just get burnt out. But But yeah, they have a goal point. I always tell teams you have to have an objective. You have to have a goal. You can change your mind. You can change your mind 100 times.
Totally. And you won't see coming. I also am a big believer, like, shut up and show up. Like, listen, if you're offered an opportunity or you're offered something, I'm not saying be totally indiscriminate about it, but go, you know what? Let me just see where that goes. Cause you're never gonna know. You can't
Yeah, I talk a lot
tell.
about hand raisers. I
Yeah,
think there is
agreed.
some when you meet hand raisers, and that's kind of my bias. When you meet hand raisers, they build networks faster. They get up put up for more opportunities because they're naturally curious. They're hungry. Who wants to convince someone to engage with them or work on something? You want the hand raiser who's like, I'm dying to get involved with that. Let me just do something
Yeah.
on that project. That has really opened many of my doors in my career.
Is that right? Just by volunteering to say, I'd like to take a run at that if I could. Is that what you mean by that? Do you have an
Almost every time.
Do you have an example of that, Lauren, by the way?
All of my last 5 roles, I would say, actually.
Oh,
Because
so it's
bec
pattern now. I got it. It's pattern. I got it.
it's a pattern. I would yes, I am not yes, as you have heard, I'm not great in a very tight box, but I definitely can play by the rules. Um, my favorite quote, by the way, is a Picasso quote. It's "Learn the rules like a pro, so you can break them like an artist." Um
Oh, wow. I've not heard that. That's a great quote.
Oh, that's my
Great.
favorite one. That is definitely my mantra, but, maybe I'll start with the talent strategy role, which I mentioned. That was talent management is a very common role, and I did play a role in talent management, which is part of it, but it's unusual to go tap a marketing strategist or marketer, to come and get engaged with talent. But I said, "Hey, let me define what this might look like." And actually at the time, a big part of the role too was to better position Brunswick as an employer of choice. And we've
Totally.
really
Totally.
just been on a great run. I mean, I think we're on our fourth s- fourth consecutive role as year as Forbes
I
best
saw
large employees to
I
work for. And
I saw that really high regard from a number of different sources for best employer, right?
yeah, we started making the times list a couple of years ago, but that was there was a need from the business, and I said, "Let me just try something." Um, and again, there's very few things you can't get yourself out of. And that role led to our CEO at the time. He was our CTO previous to that, and he ran a number of our businesses. But in terms of corporate infrastructure, he didn't have a lot of strategy support. And so I said, "Okay, well, I've done that, and we're gonna have to address the talent side of this anyways." So I started supporting him, and that really led to the work, and the introduction to the CMO opportunity, which we had not ever had before.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny too. I love to tell this story. My kids have heard this story too many times. You know what happened to me too for my career was the best thing ever is that I was at an agency. It was an ad agency of the year. I'll try and make it a short story. It was an ad agency of the year, right? Best creative agency of the year. This is back in the 90s. And I joined this agency to lead the Frito-Lay business. Then Frito-Lay, Roger Enrico came in and fired us like just literally months after I'd been there. Like, oh my God, what a disaster. So now I'm not really sure I have anything to do, right? I'm kind of just loitering around. And the agency's biggest client was in the review. In fact, there was a whole book written about this experience, what happened called We're a Sucker's Moon by Randall Rothenberg, formerly the later CEO of the IAB. So long story, I got I didn't have anything to do. Like I really literally had nothing to do with Lauren. I was just waiting to see if we either kept this either got new business or kept the business that we were in the process of potentially losing with Subaru. And I wrote a paper around single source measurement.
Oh.
And that was basically combining. It was just an interest area. Man, I called a bunch of people, interviewed. I don't know what I was doing with the paper. It wasn't like I was presenting anywhere. It's just sort of silly. And it gave me this much information about technology and marketing, which was that much more information than everybody else in New York City had at the time. And I got a call from Y&R to come run their interactive group. And it was not because I had anything particular or special, but it was because I had written that white paper and I demonstrated an interest around that they said, this might be, I mean, really, this by the sheerest margins. And it was after 6 months into that job that then, the Mosaic was announced, which was the beginning of the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
And that's what got me, and you know me, like I have a very strong digital orientation and I got it very early on. But it's just because I told myself to keep myself busy and write that paper that gave me enough knowledge that led to the next one. You just don't know.
Well, you had that deep-seated curiosity. It's so funny you tell me this story because now I think, we always end up kind of in dinners next to each other. We've always swapping stories, but I think about my earlier career days, my white paper days very fondly because I used to do the same thing. I would feel like there's this meaty topic that I wanted to just
Correct.
sort my thoughts and dig into. And I remember a mentor at one point making a joke like, "Oh, here's another white paper from Lauren." But honestly, it was entertaining for me, and
Yeah.
it's helpful for the company, especially if you're trying to drive change on a topic that people don't know a lot about.
Correct. Yeah, and I don't even remember why I picked that as a topic, other than I don't know why I thought. I mean, I don't know. I'm a measurement oriented guy. I sort of always have been. Very
Is
funny.
that how you
And
started
that
getting engaged with Rex on like
Well,
surf and?
kind of actually. I found Rex, so that was another side story there. So just for the listener, basically Rex Briggs created multi-touch attribution, and he did it. He wasn't doing. He started to work on it, but then I came in as head of the IB, and I needed a measurement system to measure internet. So internet advertising, if anybody can remember back this far, was only 3% of our marketing mix, and we knew, and media mix modeling couldn't measure it, so we needed some else. So Rex was creating this new thing. We didn't call it MTA at the time. But over the course of the next 5 years, I spent $7 million of IAB money and member money in order to do what was 24 MTA studies that validate that as a methodology. But more importantly, it told us that the high water mark was that you should be spending 25% of your budgets in digital marketing. And that was a revolution. At the time we did that, it was a big study for Ford that really changed everything. It was dramatic. And
Yeah.
Bill Ford was behind it. In fact, I'll tell you a funny aside to that. We never lied about any results we ever released. I mean, I held the board off. The board every once in a while was sort of like, well, shouldn't you? I'm like, no, we're going to tell the truth all the time, which is kind of my mantra here now at the MMA. The only time we didn't tell full facts is that we didn't tell everybody that Ford sold $2.3 billion more in trucks. We lowered the number a little bit because they didn't want the competition to know. And we thought, we're still making the point about the sales impact. We just didn't make it as dramatic as it was because it was game changing. It was 10% of sales increase just by having internet in the mix early on. It was
Wow. Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a lower clutter channel at the time, right? And so they were really able to make a mark.
Correct. And listen, had consumers really adopting internet, which was producing more ads, which created a high supply, but then this middling demand by marketers, what made it obviously the deal of the century. That's basically, we've created a very complicated measurement technique to do that. Yeah, but that's how I first got, I think I first knew, well, actually I knew Rex even before that, but that's where he and I really bonded and then wrote the book, What Sticks. So, okay, listen, but we have more fun. We have more fun here. We got to get into the big topic, right? Okay. So I know this is just like dinner, right? Exactly. You and I go on and on until the time I saw it coming. I knew this is what was going to happen. Okay. But listen, so the purpose of Building Better CMOs, right? Which is all oriented. It's not meant to be just the usual, dare I say, CMO wash up with a lot of podcasts going to do. It's really to sort of look frankly at what are the challenges that marketing and marketers have. Sometimes that's just fodder for me to create new initiatives, and I'm getting a big long list of the things that we in marketing still need to fix, which is the purpose, obviously, the trade search. But as you look out, and in your experience, especially in having diversity of roles, like what do you think marketing or marketers either don't fully understand, don't appreciate, should be better at, maybe can work harder at? What do you think where's the best room for improvement, I guess, putting on your HR hat, I guess, at some level? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, obviously I have an opinion, and I've done a lot of work in the space over the last 5 years, but I'm not sure how much it matters what my opinion alone is if no one buys into it, if no one believes it. So
Okay,
I
fair
like
enough.
to always start with who are the key stakeholders, who really matter. So I asked a number of
Wow.
CEOs and CFOs in our network the same
Okay.
question. So these are predominantly like consumer durable enterprises, multi-brand portfolios majority. And I just said, hey, what do you think marketing could be doing better? And I didn't even think about it at the time, but this is kind of a cheat sheet too for what should I do next with my organization?
No kidding.
Um,
No kidding. Yeah, yeah. You're asking like a good marketer, you're asking the customer's input.
yeah,
Exactly. And yeah, our
right.
peers are customers at some level. Right. Yep.
I think too, yeah. It was kind of what matters most to you. And actually, it was pretty, I saw a lot of consistency around two themes. The first was there was strong alignment around focus on what's measurable,
Oh,
focus on the
okay. Yeah.
ROI. Those are your CFOs, a little your CEOs, but more the CFOs. Just show
Yep.
me, connect the dots for me to sales, and I'll follow along.
Yep.
The other was really strong alignment in at least my network around um, marketers have got to play a role in educating our organization and how to think about modern marketing. Um, and that was actually a very strong and consistent theme. And I've seen that over the last few years. And in some ways, still a surprise, and in other ways, not a surprise. But just this very hungry, kind of strong pull signal from other leadership on teach me what I need to know about this space before I can have a strong opinion on
Yeah.
what role it plays in our go-to-market strategy.
Okay. I'm going to set aside measurement for a second, just for
Okay.
a minute or two here, because that's like perennial. And, the fact I was saying to somebody the other day, the fact that we still haven't solved measurement as a function, it just really bemoans I don't know,
I
immaturity,
feel
I
like
guess,
we've
as an
done a lot of
industry.
progress. Rex helped us with a lot of our
Did
progress,
he?
which is why I
Yeah.
asked about him. I
Yeah,
feel,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that was if he came back and saw us now, he'd be so proud. But we'll talk about that
Oh,
another time.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Well, we'll do a revisiting tour. Okay, but talk about this. So, and just so I heard it right, Lauren, this is educating the rest of the C-suite, educating the company. Talk a little bit more about info, or is it just is it being voice of the customer? What did you kind of hear from people that they were advised us to do?
Well, a couple things. I would say, depending on what type of organization you're at, one of the quotes someone gave me, which was a different, not our company, but an
Yeah. Hey,
adjacency. It was,
yeah, let's make sure the listeners are aware. This is not just direct from Brunswick management.
yes,
You diversified
yes,
the input. Yeah,
yes.
good. Okay. Yep.
We tapped other similar companies, but one person said, there are still folks who feel like marketing is just fluff. It's just make things pretty, and um, you need to help redefine what marketing really is.
Okay, okay. So we're not just
Um,
educated about consumers or outside the company, the unique perspective and insights we might have, but it's also just educating what is the role of marketing.
Yeah, and it is uniquely different than other functions because like finance, how often does finance have a new playbook? Even I mean, even IT, there's new tools and digital transformation all the time, but still, how you introduce those, bring them to life, the playbook can be fairly consistent.
Right.
Marketing has completely changed all of the underlying capabilities it has
E-
to bring to life to compete and win.
Every 2 years, in part because consumers' patterns have changed so much. I mean, who can kind of keep? I mean, in some regards, and this is maybe a bit of old news. I mean, TikTok to me kind of came out of nowhere, sort
Yeah.
of.
And we just needed another channel, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Well, consumers apparently thought they did. I mean, that's what's funny about it. Like they
Yeah.
chose to make that. And I've said this a bunch. I'm pretty sure that TikTok's probably on a per episode would be the wrong, but a per unit. I think TikTok's probably my number one media channel now.
Oh, is it? It's one of the top search engines, especially for Gen Z.
And as
I'm
a
like
search
the
engine now too, exactly. Which it changed its role dramatically too. Right. Sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead though. Yeah.
I actually use Instagram quite a bit for my search engine because I like when it learns me and then shows me new brands and things to buy. But anyways,
Yeah, I think there's a bifurcation. Yeah, I just for whatever reason never became an Instagram person. I don't really have any
oh,
reason
do you
why.
skip
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, I don't know if I skipped it. I just never. Whereas my kids are very Instagram, and yeah. So yeah. Okay, okay. But so consumers keep changing. That's part of what we need to. And we do have a dramatically changing business and orientation.
So the capability is totally different. It's kind of the define it, but then it's so technical. Um,
Yes, very.
especially at if you're doing it well, it is just going to be a very technical competency. It is the art and the science. But especially in the ROI and attribution side, it can be very quantifiable, very data backed. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about and has struck a lot of people in my network is that is a big relearning. What all the KPIs are, how do they all relate, the different roles in the consumer journey, that's a bit of a learning curve to bring people along to understand how to interpret all the KPIs, how do these work together.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I had a CMO say the oddest thing to me. I've repeated this a lot recently. Not oddest, caught my attention. Maybe is a better way to do it because I didn't think it was such an odd thought. But they basically said they'd asked whether or not MMA is good, as you know, and for the listener, maybe if they're not aware, we're good at the think tank kind of stuff. We come up with new thesis or hypothesis. We run a series of experiments. We explore areas that are sort of new. Here's a CMO. They go, have you done any Have you done any measurement on the value difference between this is funny what they said between authentic advertising like with an influencer
Oh,
versus and it's funny she hesitates she goes versus inauthentic like
inauthentic.
I do now. And I went, wow, since when do we call our ads inauthentic? I thought, oh my God, that's such a I'm like, oh Jesus, no, there's a whole nother complexity. But influence is a whole nother strategy in the world that didn't exist at this kind of scale and the way that it's being done today. I mean, I guess celebrity's always been around, but not influencer strategy, right?
Yeah, well, kind of related where I thought you were going to go is the relationship between brand and
Oh,
performance,
right.
which is a little bit of that bent. But in terms of the educational topics, after we did a lot of work on understanding the KPIs and attribution. I have spent a lot of my time, especially recently, on the relationship between brand and performance,
Oh,
because
interesting.
especially
Interesting.
when the market's really dynamic or tight, everyone's going through a lot of change. So budgets for everyone, every industry are tight. There's this propensity to do all performance, all ROI. I can, there are no numbers. People get the numbers.
There's a giant sucking that sound there, right? I totally agree that it's a pat answer, and we know from the research we've done it's missing the boat.
Right. Well, for us, we started all of our brands had this kind of pull towards only performance and more the sales driven or well, I won't use the other CMOs kind of quote, but less organic, more just buy
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Um, and the problem is you don't give consumers enough information to
right.
form an opinion. They're
Yeah.
not building a relationship with your brand and your product because all you're just running around being like, "Buy this, buy this, buy this." There's no depth. So and I've quoted a lot of your studies that you guys have done on those relationships because 'cause they're quantifiable, and I didn't have our own data at the time.
Yeah. And listen, even take like Boston Whaler. Boston Whaler's yours, right? Okay. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's maybe one or two other very premium boat brands, but Boston Whaler's one of them. Congratulations. Well done, everybody. Whoever did that originally, right? It's a premium price product,
Yep.
absolutely. But yeah, you don't want to just sort, like promo offers and direct to consumer be just transaction for that, I don't think. And yet, you
No.
don't want to miss the market. So,
Well, yeah, especially if it's a lifestyle or I was listening to you, you interviewed Charlotte Blank, right, at, Range Rover. I have a Range Rover, by the way.
one of my favorites,
Um,
right? Exactly. There we go. Yes.
and nothing
Yeah.
kills
And she said, entrepreneurs buy Range Rovers. Did you hear that point in there
yeah,
too?
I
That was
did,
very
I
funny.
did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but nothing kills a brand like just a heavy sales discount message, especially a premium brand. Someone said this to me once that I loved it. It was, I don't think of it they said advertising is like a tax on weak brands,
Yeah.
which, you
Yeah,
know
this that was the Silicon Valley. I will say though, Silicon Valley got very full of themselves at one point when when the VCs were funding all those direct to consumer brands, and
Oh,
they were funding performance transaction oriented marketing, and many of those brands, except for a few like Peloton and a few others, like most of them got crushed because I think they didn't have a strong foundation.
yeah, it's a very short-term strategy. It's very transactional, and the relationship, if you can build it the right way, can endure a lot, but it takes a lot of time to build.
Yeah. That's why I liked your idea too. I like that Ripple community. I thought, wow, how
Yeah.
strong to kind of do that to bring boaters together. Because I mean, they're doing the dock, they're doing it within your digital forum. So, okay, so let's come back. So here, you and I are going to go down to serious tangents. Listeners, just try to keep up. So, let's come back to this idea of helping people to understand marketing. So they do need to understand the brand performance dynamic. They do need to understand sort of the fundamental. Well, what do you tell people for the role of marketing within a company like Brunswick? Because these are longer term. Nobody's buying a boat every week. It's not like soap. So yeah, how do you go at that? Yeah.
I try not to overthink it. I think, there's probably many different ways to define it, but I think the way that matters the most is one that people can remember, and say back to anyone. So I talk about building strong brands and generating demand, especially in a consumer space, and we play in consumer product space. Marketing is now your sales engine.
Oh, okay. And do people accept that marketing is a sales engine?
Yeah. I mean, we have a strong B2B business as well. So we also have a sales team and there's a role for sales, but that's probably the space that's changing the fastest of any competency in at least in our kind of value chain.
Okay. And what else does marketing do as you talk to the company, to employees internally to help them understand, or your fellow C-suite executives?
To help
You bring it.
understand.
Yeah.
Well,
What do you do from a? I mean, I'm even curious too, Lauren, if it makes sense to go there at a sort of how do you operationalize it? Dumb word, but how do you bring that? Is there a process you use? How do you train people? How do you share? Do you, I know actually now I'm going to ask you 5 questions and not finish one of them. Let me try this. Do you think that other people in the company understand the customer mindset? I would think that would be a bit of a challenge for some people to. They
I
think they might
think
know.
I think that's a tricky one. I would
Yeah.
say there's probably a lot of
Sorry.
room to grow. So we are at Brunswick, we have a lot of boaters who are also the customer and consumer. However, there's a difference between knowing what you as the consumer wants and understanding your interests and how they influence your behaviors and how brands can take advantage of those to generate demand, which I know you talked about in one of your sessions too. I think that is what there's still a world of understanding that needs to be had, and the role of how all of this connects to the customer experience and how impactful is that for brands.
Do you own customer experience there? Does
We,
the
customer
does
customer
marketing own customer experience?
No, not exclusively. There are service teams. I certainly influence the agenda quite a bit. I'm one of the stronger voices at the table advocating for the customer experience, and I frankly, I think it's just gonna get louder and louder with AI because if AI tools can make some things just more accessible, easier, faster, like information transparency, which is part of
Yeah.
what marketers are spending money on, is educating consumers. I think where brands will start to compete is closer to the consumer, more on experience attributes. And I think it'll
Hmm.
become table stakes, and it's probably gonna be the next big frontier of change that we're all gonna have to face. It
Yeah.
feels similar to me like digital transformation or e-commerce.
Right.
Um, I still remember the days where I was sitting in rooms and we were talking about, well, if you don't have a website yet, you should get a website for your business. It's like, I feel like that's kind of where we're at next.
Haven't you also been there leading the digital transformation of the Brunswick business? What is that?
On the
What does that
customer
mean?
experience side, yeah.
Yeah. What does that mean for you all? Like, what is that?
For us, it's about putting a digital backbone in place. So as consumers go through our ecosystem, which is complex, we're giving them a seamless experience. There's handoffs between kind of our, I call it our value chain. If you work with either OEMs or dealers or even cross shop between our brands, we've got kind of a digital thread that helps you navigate through our ecosystem. And for us, it gives us the privileged position of having the most robust set of consumer data in the industry, which you can imagine how powerful it is in the world of AI.
Oh, 100 billion%.
But even that right now, that right there in terms of a value proposition and that systems thinking would need a lot of education internally and at many companies. What's the value of data? How should we be thinking about it? That's another topic that as marketers, we need to really put it in context and translate it to business value
Right.
so that people can invest behind the idea.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, so when you did your little, mini research project to understand sort of marketing's reflections on marketing from other C-suite, was there anything else that really caught your attention that you thought anything that surprised you in that?
The emphasis on education did surprise me. I feel like I went through the whole Sarah curve of reaction to it because I think at first there's this my brain is kind of thinking, so you want me to teach you my job? Why don't we just trust the marketers to do their jobs, which is very very naive.
Right.
And that was not my reaction most recently, but in the beginning when I realized how much of a hurdle education was going to be, that was my initial reaction, which is very naive. What surprised me too, and you asked kind of what mechanisms worked, I had to establish a global enterprise QBR that just focused on the marketing function.
Hmm.
Most organizations are familiar with business QBRs. We have 4 business units. Each business unit has a QBR. We also had to create a marketing one that we do quarterly because the type of conversations and the way that we look at the activities is so different. And that was actually the biggest game changer in creating a more common language and uniting our leaders around what things we had to invest behind.
Right.
Um, I was a little resistant to that. It's like, oh, another QBR. Who needs another QBR?
Right.
It has been hugely impactful and a lot of work.
Okay. And for the listener, obviously quarterly business review,
Quarterly
just in
business review.
case on the off chance. So, Lauren, what are you sharing? What are you presenting at QBRs? Because I don't know that I don't know I've asked. I will now. I've heard of other CMOs or marketing departments that are doing QBRs around marketing.
Well,
Who's invited? Give me some of the dynamics. How do you think that should work? And then give me a sense of some of the give the listener some of the topics that you might be covering in that.
so we include our 4 business unit presidents, our CEO, CFO. The business unit CFOs are invited as well. Um, we have a marketing leader at each division. Um, and then our CHRO from the talent side, and we cover what are the marketing targets. So we have
Yeah.
revenue targets, we have unit sales
Okay.
targets.
Okay.
We have
And
commerce targets.
marketing owns the revenue target, or
Jointly. I
yeah,
mean, the
yeah, yeah.
business owns the P&L. So ours is we call it a pro forma or a shadow P&L. So the 2 sides own yeah. So each of our businesses and only one of our business doesn't have revenue and unit targets. so we focus a little bit more on that business on brand equity targets, engagement targets. But yeah, we have done a lot of work to quantify what marketing is aiming to achieve, and we hold ourselves very highly accountable to hitting those numbers, as well as all of our online sales targets. And we actually have targets too around sales attributable to marketing. So we kind of boldly said by X date, we're going to have 50% of our revenue as a company will be supported by digitally assisted sales or marketing attributable revenue, which we only assign attribution if I can connect the two records. So I can connect a sales record with a marketing record, and only if there's an exact match do we say that it's attributable to marketing. So we report on all of those KPIs. And then if
Wow.
we usually do have time, assuming we have some time, we also actually report all of our OpEx. What's of our working dollars versus non-working dollars split? What are kind of the bigger buckets? That was very important too. I think sometimes there can be a misnomer that marketing is just spending a bunch of money.
Right.
I've never seen that. Maybe I don't know, maybe in the 90s, .com, .com bubble, whatever. We are not. We are very lean, scrappy. So I put all of our kind of mix and our priorities out there, and then we can have a constructive conversation with real facts. That has done a lot in terms of getting people together. And then we do examples and case studies. So we were talking about ROI and measurement before. We have an always on test and learn program, A/B testing. We do dark testing, and we will bring all those case studies and results forward to just continue to build belief. Like, here's what our Freedom Boat Club brand just did, and here's what happened when they added to their performance campaigns a national campaign that was more brand oriented. And we do those, yeah, once a quarter for about 3 hours globally.
It's interesting. Everything you just said, too, if I heard you properly, at least 90% of what you just said was all focused on the business dynamics, not like, hey, here's another pretty campaign we did, by the way, just to be, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I
Although
don't
I'm
focus
sure
a
people
ton
are
on.
interested in the campaigns, they want to see it. I'm sure it comes up, but that's not where you just put the emphasis.
Right. No. Honestly, the times I can think of where we're focusing a little bit more on the aesthetic, with our Bayliner brand during COVID, you brought up COVID, more than 50% of the buyers entering into that brand during the COVID years were first-time boat buyers,
Okay.
and it over-indexed with women, which is a
Oh.
priority in the industry if you're going to sustain relevance. So we did focus on making sure we well represented female interests. And we did some aesthetic repositioning with that brand, but it's still with a business objective in mind, obviously.
Have you ever done sort of any, I think it's called entomology research. It's where you actually go into people's homes and listen to how or go onto their boats and listen to how they talk about their boats or their experience in that. You guys
Yeah.
done any of that?
Yeah, we have. We do two dimensions. When you're talking about the language and the vocabulary, that will come through like our brand health tracking,
Uh,
through associations and things. But we also do recorded user experience studies. So not just the language, but also how they engage with the space. And we do quite a bit of that actually.
I just interviewed the CMO of Hyundai in India, oddly enough, and he raised a point that really, you'll understand why it caught my attention. He said that teenage daughters, if there's a teenage daughter, what they figured out from doing that kind of in-home research around automotive, he goes, teenage daughters make the decision what car gets bought.
Oh, interesting.
And here's why that's really funny. I mean, you know me well enough, right? I'm a New York City person. I mean, I'm not a truck person. You would never describe me as a truck person. And yet, Lauren, we bought a truck when my daughter was a teenager based
That's
on her
funny.
insistence. And my wife and I still laugh about it because neither one of us are really truck people. And I loved having the car for a while. It was fun. But it was really driven by our daughter. So I wonder, like, the things you kind of pick up that people wouldn't otherwise know.
Well, I would say the wife will often influence the boat purchase decision, and they often influence to the attributes that you're looking for, whether it's, a utility kind of fishing vehicle
Right,
or if it has more creature comforts,
right.
where you want to invest in the design side. But on
Yeah.
your car story, one of my colleagues was saying, maybe connecting to the TikTok. his daughter was turning 16, they had to buy a car, and she really wanted a Jeep, so he sent her a link on, like, I don't know, Car Trader or something, and she said, "I'll just look it up on TikTok, Dad." He's like, "TikTok is where you're gonna figure out how to buy a car?" That's what she did.
It is happening. It is happening for sure. Hey, Lauren, what's the most do you have in your mind maybe some of the more or even just one really interesting thing that happened out of the quarterly business reviews, all these QBRs? Like, was there like a feedback or a perspective or something you heard that you go, "Ooh, I did not see that coming, that somebody would think that way or would have that kind of input or that kind of value out of it"? I'm curious.
I'm trying to think. Well, I think a couple things. Our brands tend to think their go-to-markets are different. The brands are so different. There's not going to be a lot of synergies. There are so many synergies. I think it surprises people every single time. How much we can take a capability that we develop on one brand and pull it across many.
Huh. Do you have an
The
example? You have
moment
an example of that? Yeah.
Actually, a lot of our recalibration that we've done on media over the last couple years, we've been able to apply across many brands because it can be expensive if you're learning that lesson times 60 plus brands. So we've gotten really strong with our Freedom Boat Club brand, for example, on media management. And we've taken many of those lessons learned and pulled them over to the boat side, which you buying a boat, the consumer journey is totally different. And yet the way that we leverage media, there's a lot of consistency. Um, but maybe the ones that surprised me, the moments where I was like, I can't believe that was just said, were actually when I thought I was building an agenda to frame a perspective, and I thought I was on a real uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said something like, and thank you to our marketing partners for all the work that they put into this. And I'll give you an example.
Oh, interesting.
When we started to see the market turn last year, many companies faced kind of a COVID correction year. We didn't for a very long time. Last year was the first year we started to see some changes in consumer demand, just macro kind of constraints.
Mm-hmm.
And what surprised me was as budgets got tighter, I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm always selling. I'm going to have to fight. It surprised me, and this is obvious now, but how much easier it is to build an agenda around a stronger marketing function when the business really needs the demand. And I remember one meeting where we were talking about our test and learn strategy, and we were talking about some heavy up tests. We were going to double the investment in a couple markets to see how much more incremental engagement we could drive.
Yep.
And I felt mixed going into the climate we were going into to say we're going to just double our spend. And it was actually some of our business leaders, including our CFO, who said, "Do it. It's not worth the risk to hold back. Do the test, show us the results. We'll learn from there." And that was a surprise because I was not driving. That was really a pull signal.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, Lauren. So my most important question, given that you know me, it's now been some number of years. Do you know what brand of boat is right for me? Like, what recommendation? So when I narrow the focus, what boat of Brunswick should I go get? Do you know?
I do think you're a Boston Whaler guy. I really do. It's the East Coast boating
It's
lifestyle.
at East Coast Nantucket, right?
Yeah,
Martha's Vineyard.
you're a Boston Whaler guy.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I spent some time a number of years ago looking at a thing called sport yachts, which I thought was very funny. I just thought
I
the
was
name
gonna
was
say,
hilarious.
as long as I don't entertain your kind of yacht, your itch for a yacht. But I will say this: the Boston Whaler has a big portfolio range, and there are many tenders that are Boston Whalers. If that
Yeah,
doesn't surprise you, so
that's true.
you can get
Yeah.
your yacht and a whaler.
Oh, I could get there. I like the upsell. That's very well done. I'm sure that will show up in the sales figures. See how marketing's working. You have to put that in your QBR. I think I sold a yacht and a whaler this week, people.
I just got Deb into a Sea Ray too, so
Oh, you
I'm.
did? Is that
I'll
right?
get to you guys eventually. Yeah,
Wait. What'd she get the Sea Ray? Wait, can I ask? Can we talk about somebody not here? I
yeah.
don't know. What'd you get the Sea Ray for?
What
In
for? For a better
yeah.
life.
Yeah, no, Why did I not see that coming? I just walked right into that one, didn't I? No. Where is she? But she's in Michigan. So is she on a lake there, or is she like transporting it to a lake? Is that what she's doing?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, she'll
wow.
I actually didn't grill her, but like we
Yeah,
have
that's
a
funny.
boat on Lake Michigan, and we have a land on an inland lake that we trailer. But yeah, I think she has a slip on a bigger lake there. It's perfect for Michigan. But
I
yeah.
love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, there we go. And any other hot boat tips for the listeners that they should know?
Uh, just go slow when you're gonna hit things. You're always gonna hit things, just go slowly. That's what I told her, by the way. She said, "I need a lot more lessons." I said, "Well, just so you know, you will always hit something. The art of it is to just go slowly into it."
There we go. Good. Well, that's learned from many consumer insights and reflections. Lauren, I can't tell you how much fun this has been. I knew it was going to be. We just covered so much ground there. I feel like I have a ton of other notes here I wanted to cover, but I think we need to let
I
the listener
know.
go, and so they have more time to go buy boats. Thank you for doing
Thank you
this.
for having me. I love having these conversations and always chatting with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks again to Lauren Beckstedt from Brunswick for coming on Building Better CMOs. Check the description of this episode for links to connect with Lauren. If you like this episode, you might also really enjoy my conversation with General Mills CMO Doug Martin, FanDuel Chief Commercial Officer Mike Raffensperger, and AT&T CMO Kellen Smith-Kenny. You can find those episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are hearing me now. At MMA, we are working to make marketing matter much more through conferences, research, and education. If you want to know more, visit MMAglobal.com. You can also email me directly, greg@MMAglobal.com. Don't forget, Building Better CMOs is now on YouTube. Just go to bettercmos.com/YouTube to start watching. Our producer and podcast consultant is Eric Johnson from lightningpod.fm. Artwork is Jason Chase. A special thanks to Angela Gray and Dan Whiting. This is Greg Stuart. I'll see you in 2 weeks.